Hello and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Hot Air Balloon Giant Cupcake, where I'm going to be showing you how to make this gorgeous hot air balloon cupcake using your giant cupcake mold. This cake is so simple and so easy to customize, and by the time I finish showing you how to make it, you're going to kick yourself if you didn't think about doing this earlier. For today's tutorial, you're going to need a cake board. Now I've iced mine light blue, just following our how to ice a cake board episode, which I will leave a link to in the description box below. And then I cut out some really rough little cloud shapes out of some white fondant, stuck them on using a tiny bit of water, and then re-rolled over them so they're really nice and flat and flush with the board. This is just going to give you sort of the effect that your hot air balloon is floating in the clouds. If you haven't baked a giant cupcake before, I will leave a link to our giant cupcake basic series in the description box below. Basically, I've only baked the bottom half of my giant cupcake, so not the big cone-shaped top, and I've also made the chocolate cupcake case. The one thing you want to consider when you're actually carving your base of your cupcake down is you want to make sure the cake is situated inside, so within the line of your giant cupcake case, about 1/2 centimetre to 1 centimetre, so that you've got some room so that your chocolate ganache can float in there without spilling over the sides. I've got a little bit of chocolate ganache. I will leave a link to our recipe in the description box below. This is basically 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream, and I've opted for dark chocolate today. I've got some cornflour in a shaker, a spoon, a sharp knife. I've got a balloon stick. So these are like a plastic stick with a little plastic cup on the end that you get at fairs and carnivals to hold your balloons, and they're available at a lot of different cheap shops. Otherwise, have a look on eBay. I've got a paintbrush. I've got a pizza cutter. You can also use the knife. A fondant rolling pin, a toothpick or a skewer, some melted white chocolate, some plain water, and I've got a bit of a selection of balloons today. So I'm going to be showing you some images at the end of this video, but basically these are to illustrate how easily customizable this cake is. Slightly differentiate your color scheme, pick a new balloon, and you've got an entirely different cake. I've also got some fondant or modelling chocolate. I'm using a tan colour that perfectly matches my chocolate cupcake base, and then 2 alternating, contrasting or matching colours. I've gone for green and yellow. So let's get started. You need to roll out a nice long sausage from your tan or your matching coloured fondant. Now I will mention it's always better to colour the chocolate before you colour the fondant, and to get this tan colour on my cupcake base I used 80% white chocolate and 10 or 20% of either milk or dark chocolate just to give us that really nice latte colour, and then I coloured my fondant. Once you've got a nice, even, long, thin sausage rolled out of your fondant, take your water and your paintbrush and just paint around the edges of your cupcake case with that water. This is just going to give your fondant something to stick to. Once you're happy you've got a really nice coating of that water all the way around the edges, take your snake of fondant or your sausage of fondant and you just want to rest it on the top. Rest it gently first before you start pushing it down. Once you're happy you've got about the right length, use your fingers and just go around, neaten it up and sort of push it down into those little rippled grooves. This actually extends the height of your cupcake case a little bit, but it also provides more of a basket sort of an effect, and it enables you to hold the ganache in there a little bit better, gives you a bit more room for it. Make sure that it's really nice and smooth, nice and flush. Sprinkle down a little bit of your cornflour now and take your green, and we're also going to do a yellow fondant. You want to roll these out, and I'm going to use rectangles because they're an easy shape, but roll them out really, really nice and thin because these are going to make sort of like our little bunting flags or our colourful flags around the circumference of our hot air balloon basket, and you want them to kind of look like they're flowing in the breeze, so thinner is better. Once you've rolled out a long rectangle, use either your knife or your pizza cutter, and you just want to cut off the 2 ends and then 2 nice straight sides. Try to get those 2 pieces roughly the same sort of width. The length, it doesn't really matter, but roughly the same width. Then we're going to start cutting some little triangles out for all of our little bunting flags. So I find the knife best for this, and I just try to cut relatively similar size. They don't have to be perfect little triangles. Use your paintbrush to apply just a small amount of that tap water to the top section of each of those bunting flags and then stick them down. This is another reason why we applied that fondant sausage, because it's going to stick a little bit better to the fondant sausage than it's going to stick directly to the chocolate of that cupcake case. You want to put your little contrasting colours and make sure that as you stick them you're using your fingers just to kind of pinch off the ends and tilt them in different directions so that you're getting a bit of movement. I did these in the 2 different colours, and then I thought, you know what, if you had the time, these would look amazing in rainbow. So all the different colours of the rainbow would just really, really make the colours on this cake absolutely pop. Once all of your little bunting flags are in place, and with your last one, you may just need to trim it down a fraction smaller so that it fits in your little remaining gap. But once you're happy you've got all of those little bunting flags on, it's time to apply our ganache. Now with this ganache goes through a couple of different stages. When you first make it, it's really hot and it's really runny. You don't want this ganache to be hot or even warm because it's going to be touching that chocolate. If you leave it to set for a couple of hours, it goes really, really firm and you don't want it too firm. So I recommend making it about an hour or so before you want to use it and just leaving it on the bench. Scoop about a cup or so of that ganache into the top of your giant cupcake and then just use the back of your spoon just to really even it out. It's going to depend on how much space you've left between the cupcake and the top of your little fondant sausage as to exactly how much ganache you're going to need for the top of this giant cupcake. I will also mention that I use the ganache to layer my cupcake rather than a buttercream, so I made a full batch of the ganache and I've used it right throughout the cake. Now we want to attach our cake to our little cake board, so just take a bit of that melted white chocolate and your toothpick or a spoon, put down a little blob of melted chocolate. This is just going to be to securely glue our basket to the board. Stick the basket straight on the board, and while that chocolate's still wet, you've got a couple of seconds to have a little play around with it and make sure that it's really nice and centered in those clouds. Take your blown up balloon and you want to just attach it to your little plastic cup. This can be a bit harder than it looks and it can be kind of tricky. So basically what you want to do is you want to feed it through the first little slip and then you want to drag the knot around through the second and then have the little tail hanging out the third before you stick it on that little cup. Now check the height of your balloon. I find these balloon sticks a touch tall. So when I stuck it in, my balloon is miles away from the top of my cake. I'm actually going to trim off about 3 inches or so of the base of that balloon stick so that my balloon is much closer to my cake, which makes it look more realistic like a hot air balloon. That is essentially your hot air balloon cake completely finished. Now I decided I wanted to go a little bit over the top with mine and I'm going to put some of my little fondant unicorns into that basket. I've got a tutorial on how to make these unicorns, which I'll link to in the description box below. You could go ahead and make little fondant teddy bears. You could put some favourite toys in there, whatever you think's going to work for the theme of your party. And then I just took it a little bit over the top with a gorgeous rainbow ribbon. This is such an easily customizable and such a versatile design. It's going to feed about 8 to 10 people, so it's perfect for a small party. I hope you guys love this idea. If you love it, give it a share, give it a thumbs up, and make sure you let me know in the comments box below. Thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.